Hey everyone, Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. Thank you for joining us. Guesting this morning with St. Albans Mayor Tim Smith, also the Exec Director of the Franklin County Industrial Development Corporation. Morning, Mr. Mayor.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
Good to see you.
Likewise.
I should know we're taping this show on Tuesday, March 28th, as we get ever closer to April. Kind of typical spring. I even hate to use the word spring, but kind of just a bunch of 40s, bunch of clouds and stuff. Interesting snowfall. Burlington and St. Albans, I think, is pretty similar. Is actually pretty close to average. Burlington's average is about 80 inches, and I think it's 72 plus right now. I think that would probably be surprising to a lot of folks.
We think alike, Richard. I was tracking that, not tracking it, but it was on the news the other day, and I was surprised it was at 71 inches.
Yeah.
The last time we had seen it, it was 39 inches or something.
Yeah.
It was about half of the yearly snowfall.
Yeah.
And then, excuse me, it shows up as almost a regular snowfall year.
Yeah, close to average. Again, a pretty warm, with a couple of exceptions, but gee, a pretty warm winter. I think the meteorological winter, the three coldest months, December, January, and February, I think like the third warmest on record for Burlington. So the city's gotten through winter okay?
Yeah. It's tough when you get those dustings and those 1-inch snowfalls repeatedly. I think we had a week where it seemed to happen every day.
Yeah.
So that takes a toll on the budget and the staff for sure. But last year I remember watching the news also with we had over 30 plus sub-zero days.
In fact, especially January. January was a legitimately cold, very cold month.
And this year we've had 3, I believe.
Yeah, so, just single digits.
So
anyway, so we're getting there. Maple Festival about just a month away or so.
Yeah, all the planning is in the works. Whatever that last weekend of April is, 26, 27, I guess. Mm-hmm. I would like to. I know you're gone for it. I don't know if you've.
I'll be back for Maple Fest.
No, but for this weekend, you're leaving before
I'm out of here. Yeah.
I give a shout out to the quilt show. I don't know if you've ever attended that.
I'm not sure I have. I take note of it and stuff, but not a big quilter. But that's probably a pretty good show. A lot of folks. My sister's a big quilt person.
It's a
very
very
big show.
It's big and impressive.
Wow,
I mean,
really?
the quality of the quilts that come out of there. As mayor, I have to choose one. I have to choose the mayor's pick.
No, really.
Which sort of like the car show. Don't put a whole lot of credence in my knowledge of either cars or quilting, but I go off appearance mainly. But first year I did it, I was totally impressed by it. My kids went. They they loved it. So I encourage anyone. I used to think it was only one day, but it is actually 2 days, Saturday, Sunday at City Hall this week.
At City Hall?
Yeah, it's a wonderful to see the talent of the local people and throughout the county, and I think surrounding counties as well. It's just a quality show.
It sounds good. Sounds like the Rotary Expo show. Saw you there. It sounds like that one pretty good show. Were you guys pretty happy with that?
Yeah, I think there were 4,500 people attended.
Really?
From early indication, I don't know about all vendors, but a few really were impressed on Saturday with the amount of product they sold.
Yeah.
Dave Lane over at Snow Farm Vineyard in the Islands had a real good show, from what I understand, and so it's a Rotary. I didn't make the meeting and find out all the details, but I do know they had 4,500 people.
Yeah, that sounds like pretty good attendance.
Yeah.
First time I've talked to you since the town meeting day annual city meeting, and again, budget made it through just fine. Also, what a new fire truck was the other money item.
Yeah, so we are in need of a new fire truck. It's actually, we voted on it this year, but we probably won't even get it for 2 years.
Really?
It's the backlog is 2 years. What we did choose to on the budget was and we didn't have to make a deposit or anything. We just put the order in. So we split the cost of the $850,000 between 2 fiscal years. So this year had $425 on the budget, and next year, as opposed to hitting the city residents all at once.
Yeah.
So but it
And-
did pass.
Obviously, you're in touch with the town. I mean, it sounds like city and town fire departments work well together, but on equipment, you're obviously not going after something that,
No,
that the town would be in good shape for.
not at this point.
Yeah.
I'd like to think at some point, I don't think we both need ladder trucks.
Yeah.
I'd like to think if the time comes where we collaborate on one ladder truck.
Yeah. Can you picture one fire department also, or it sounds like things are working well now?
No, I
but-
think things work well. They have the volunteer force it attends both city and town fires, so
Yeah.
it seems to be working pretty well.
How's the city doing for personnel? Sounds like the town was down a bit, but doing okay.
Oh, I haven't heard that it's an issue,
Yeah.
and I haven't inquired about that. But
Or it certainly is for a number of communities. I mean, ever tougher to get volunteers.
yeah, no, I
obviously.
think the city and town both historically have had pretty good
Yeah.
following on the volunteer crew
Yeah.
for sure. So
It sounds like doing okay.
I think there's strong leadership in both departments, and I think a good collaboration between everyone.
Yeah.
So,
In the wake of what was, I think, accurately billed as the historic city agreement between the city and town on water, wastewater, and police coverage, any new details to report on that? I realize that kicks in a bit down the road, but
Yeah.
City PD trying to expand the department, is that process
yeah, for
kinda-
sure.
yeah.
I may be exaggerating a little bit, but to get someone from
Right.
application point to
Yeah.
it's 4 to 6 months.
Wow.
So we're only 3 months from July, so 15 months, and
15
to get
months.
someone on board is going to be that 4 to 6. So, the process has begun for sure, and starting to look at, that timeline a little bit closer now.
Yeah. And I guess the plan, hope was to get, 4 more uniformed officers? Was that what City PD was
Yeah,
looking at?
4 more exactly to
Yeah.
begin with. I think even eventually to get to 6.
Yeah.
Personally, I'd like to get the street crimes unit back.
Huh.
I think we're seeing a little more drug activity,
Huh.
not just in the city but the town as well. And I think
Why did that, that was here
that was
for
a
a couple of years?
that was a budget cut.
thing?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
when we lost the town contract,
Yeah. Okay.
that took away some flexibility in
Okay.
the police budget for sure.
Huh.
So I'd like to get that back. I think we're seeing and hearing of some stuff that we'd like to, track and put an end to at some point.
Speaking of that, it makes me think of former Police Chief Gary Taylor. When is he still around? Any contact with him?
I haven't seen Gary to speak with him. I know
Yeah.
he was he at one point. I think last time he was
He was
selling.
getting into writing a book
He
or
wrote his
two.
book, and he was
Yeah.
and he had a signing at the Eloquent page
Yeah.
a while back,
Huh.
but I haven't seen to talk to him at all.
Interesting. But City PD staffing doing okay
Yeah,
staffing
no,
wise.
I think we're pretty strong right
Yeah.
now. Seems to be a good team.
Tim, I'm not sure. I don't think I saw a story in the Messenger about this, but at some point, I think it came up on one of the shows here that the city had bought the Weldon Theater in the
did.
Bellevue building.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So is the Weldon going to stay with it? What's
Well,
the plan?
that's part of the reasoning behind it is, I mean,
Yeah.
we feel the Weldon having a downtown movie theater is
It's
key.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's huge for the downtown, and we
Yeah.
want to work hard. We actually have a
Huh.
meeting. So the two buildings, the Bellevue, we're looking at extending that building out to the west
Huh.
to accommodate more housing. I mean, housing is a hot topic, as
Yeah.
you and I have talked about with the legislature and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that would be part of it. And then we're looking at the Weldon. I think the agreement was that the Weldon the owners, the Gamache family, would continue to operate it for a year
Yeah.
until we sort of do some homework and figure out what we want to do. But we do have a
Yeah.
conversation with an individual next week to talk about what his vision is, the family's vision is for the Weldon. And I think what a lot of people sort of lean towards is sort of like the Essex cinema scenario,
Huh.
where you have not only movies, but you have live entertainment and some other activities such as that, maybe open mic and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be more of a performance scenario as well as a movie theater. So that's what we're looking at. But the council felt strongly that the theater brings a lot to the downtown, and so we wanted to secure that moving forward.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, think of all the, big suburbs, places of 100,000s of people who don't even have a movie theater near them. It's unbelievable. St. Albans still has a downtown theater.
And I think the contracting for movies is getting a little more convoluted.
Yeah.
It's a little more difficult for some of the smaller ones.
Yeah.
But I think the Gamache family has a long relationship for sure.
For
between
sure.
the drive-in and the Weldon. So
that deal's done. Has the sale gone through or pending?
No, I'm quite sure it's gone
It's
through.
gone through.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
And for the Bellevue building next door, so
That's
again,
where it is.
housing,
and retail on the bottom.
retail on the bottom. Of
Same
course, used to
model.
be Subway shop
Subway
in
was
there.
there, and now there's a martial arts studio and some office space upstairs. So, bump that out towards the west a little bit with some parking below, underneath the building.
Interesting.
So,
How's downtown faring these days? Downtown get through winter okay, seemingly, pretty much?
yeah, I think so. There's always activities and rumors, but yeah, I got a text the other day of another family looking to start a business in the downtown area.
Yeah.
I understand the new Off the Rails restaurant is doing well. They sort of amended their menu a little bit, but
Yeah, I've eaten there a couple times and
Yeah.
look forward to it. I'm always asking, we're going to talking some music this summer with your great kind of courtyard. I think they were absolutely planning that. In fact, I think they've already had maybe some music inside, obviously.
Yeah, I don't think the outside patio definitely wasn't the priority in the fall because
Right.
the inside was, but I think for sure they'll be focused on some outside activities.
Yeah. So TIF project, tax increment financing, have we got more TIF coming up, Tim, or is that?
We've nothing definitive right now. We've talked about it, but and one of those housing projects with a Bellevue might be the next one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, time's running out. I think this is our last year. I think March would be our last vote on any.
Huh.
So the window is narrow. So we will be. I'm sure we'll be coming forth with something to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Were there some plans to do some work along Lake Street, or am I dreaming that? Was that going to be a possible TIF at one point, or?
Well, I think where the discussion was a rotary, right, at Federal, and
Right.
and the short-term solution was to do the four-way stop, and I think.
As I've said, it blows my mind every time. I used to dread going through that intersection. As I've said a bunch of times, it blows my mind how well the four-way stop is working.
And that's
blows my mind.
And that's the conclusion the city came to, right? Is that
why mess with that?
Why mess with that? Because it does work well.
Yeah.
And why invest $1 million or whatever the amount's going to be? So I think that was part of the discussion. I don't know if there's anything else that we're doing a couple smaller projects, but nothing significant. We're going to be, to let folks know if there's anyone who might want trees, and we'll be planting trees again, I think, in the spring and fall. We try to plant about 50 a year, just to replace the ones we lose. All these are in the green belt.
Yeah.
But if someone, in my water bill message, I usually ask people if they're interested in putting one in the green belt, and hopefully taking care of it, watering it during the hot spells and whatnot.
Right.
And we've been able to impact that tree canopy, if you will, with a variety. And the key now is that a lot of people want maple trees, but we've lost. I was talking to a gentleman a number of years ago that since he moved here in the '60s, we've lost. I think 4 species of trees to disease.
Really?
There's elm. We have now
Ash
got
trees
ash
have
tree.
taken a beating.
Yeah, and I think he had 2 others in there that happened in the 70s and 80s. But so we want to be cautious so as not to have all maple and then have have a disease take out the whole canopies throughout the city. So we do have to spread them out and take into consideration where the power lines are and all that. So we do have a variety of trees that we'll plant throughout the city, and we have been planting.
Taylor Park got some work. Did take some trees down in Taylor Park and some new plantings a while ago?
Right.
Or?
So there was a large tree taken out this past fall up by the Doughboy Monument, and then we are replacing them along the green belt between the sidewalk and the street to begin with. I mean, the initial plan was to leave that the green space in front of the the Civil War Monument. To allow for activity, so we won't be planting any more in that area, but we will continue to plant trees as we take some down.
Right. Any news perchance? The old Gil Tabor complex, part of the U.S. Customs and Immigration Services.
Nothing. We as FCIDC has directed someone to it. The short term would be more of a warehouse operation. They do have some loading dock, not so much on the office space. So hopefully it does get some use. So that's what is being looked at now.
Yeah. Housing, I mean, potential to convert that into housing?
Yeah, it's nothing the city's ready to take on. You know, we're sort of waiting to see where the developer's going to go with it.
Yeah.
If it sits idle for another year and a half, then that's probably when we'll jump into the conversation a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think it could make for great multi-purpose, you know, some office space, housing, senior housing. So I think it has great possibility, you know, 130,000 square feet. You can do a lot with that.
130,000? Wow.
You can do a lot with that. So
Wow.
We'll see where it goes here over the next year or two.
And we've talked before about the railroad building on Federal Street, that classic-looking building.
Yeah.
So totally empty with Dispatch Center having settled into their new digs?
Yeah, Dispatch Center has left and is totally up and running, and it was a pleasure to hear that they had no kinks in the move. The telecommunications, all that stuff worked wonderfully, so they're settled in, love it.
Where's the access into that? It's funny, I looked for
It's right at the end of Federal Street. It's a dirt road at this point.
Okay.
It'll be adjusted a little bit as we move forward with the rail trail and stuff.
In fact, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm not sure we've talked about that. So an extension of the rail trail coming up to get down into Lower Newton Street there?
Exactly. You'd cross by the Messenger and swing down to Federal Street to get access to the city. So it gets you off Main Street, which is a little bit busier.
And there is money for that?
Yeah, I think we got a $1 million grant or something to do that.
Will we see some work this summer on that? Or?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. That we haven't discussed that too much.
I hadn't heard about that ahead of time. Was that a hope for a while to extend it there? Or?
Oh, I think that's always been the hope. Even when it was Missisquoi Valley Rail Trail was around 30, 40 years ago. I think the hope was to run it back into the city.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even know why they did not. Other than the fact that I think Fonda might have still been active then, and they used that rail siding. So I think that's probably the main reason why it did not happen before now.
Yeah.
But the rail building is vacant. A lot of people, love the look of the building, the historic aspect.
Got a great look to it.
Yeah, historic aspect.
And but it looks like kind of a tough building with a high ceiling, not the easiest building.
Yeah, I don't know how high the main floor ceiling is. I gotta say 16 feet.
Yeah.
So it's tough to put another floor in there. I think I'm not an architect by any means, but there's a lot of hurdles that you'd have to get through to make it. But I think that ultimately is what will happen.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the time frame is, but I think it will happen at some point.
Yeah. The city bought a parcel of land just to the north of that, Tim, correct? Just along Federal Street, or am I dreaming? Didn't the city buy just like a parcel of land in there?
I don't know if we ever bought. That was where the discussion was for the modal transportation.
Huh.
I know that was in the plans when Brian Searles was city manager.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it was ever bought, to tell you the truth.
Huh.
I thought it was still
I
railroad.
guess I was thinking of another more recent acquisition, but maybe I'm dreaming that.
No, I think because that's part of the discussion is Canadian National owns the land and Rail America or Genesee, Wyoming owns the building.
Yeah.
So they have to. They've had discussions about how that will be divvied up when the building and the land is sold.
Huh.
So I think Canadian National still owns that parcel.
Really?
Yeah.
So the multimodal, that was getting some. Is that still on a drawing board or anything?
It doesn't get much play, no,
Yeah.
not much conversation.
And of course, the personal issue for me is trying to get the Vermonter to Montreal. And of course, the Adirondac's been in the news, the Amtrak Adirondack, which hadn't been going north from, I guess, Albany, Rensselaer since the pandemic. Finally, a lot of pressure from the New York folks. So, geez, if the Adirondack can make it to Montreal, is it asking that much for the Vermonter to get to Montreal?
I think, the issue has always been how do you handle immigration on the Montreal end, but it's being done somehow, and someone's paying for it. So why can't it be duplicated for the Vermonter? I totally agree with you.
I'd like to think the congressional delegate, because of course the Ethan Allen Express, understandably, got a ton of attention when they finally got passenger service back to Burlington for the first time since 1953. In fact, I was a little concerned that train would be getting all the attention, and I was getting a little paranoid because I take the Vermonter a couple times a year these days to D.C. I was wondering if that might get lost in the shuffle, but I saw stats saying the ridership on the Vermonter's been up, so I'm not hearing any concern about bagging that. I would just love to see some more effort to get it to Montreal.
Right.
Anyway, we'll see.
Speaking of transportation, I received
any bus news?
I was just going to say I received a call from Mr. Levy, and he is still hot on the trail of that, and
good for him.
So it's still it's going to happen. So we've been told it's going to happen.
Yeah. And again, this would be bus stopping in St. Albans and going on to Montreal,
and vice versa, coming from Montreal and going to Boston.
And so with Boston too.
So you could access.
Boy, that'd be great.
Yeah. So. Greyhound, like any other business, is struggling to find help and bus drivers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But he just called 10 days ago and told me that he had another conversation with Greyhound and that it's still in the making. So.
Yeah, glad to hear it.
Yeah.
The water storage tank issue, how's that?
Well, I think we're just waiting for spring to start construction.
So that'll get done this year.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Yeah. Which voters approved? I guess
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah. 2 years ago, March.
Tim, with your Franklin County Industrial Development Corp. Had Beta Technologies, have they actually started doing some stuff?
Actually, they have. I was up there over the weekend, I guess, and so they had to do a lot of stormwater work. Energizer was sort of grandfathered in from doing stormwater runoff because of the age of the building.
Yeah.
But there's legislation or laws that said once you start doing new construction, you're responsible for bringing your building up to current standards. So retention ponds have been dug for the new construction. So a lot of stormwater work. The building has started laying some pads and test their battery test Quonset huts, I guess, of that site. They busted doors out to those areas. So yeah, activity's happening, and GW Tatral is doing the site work, and I'm not sure who's doing the construction, but so it is moving forward.
Employment numbers, obviously down the road. What are we talking down the road for that?
Yeah, it's a moving target. I hear 60 to 100 the first 2 years, really? With potential to get to 300 in 5. So,
really?
Those are some of the numbers right now.
I mean, that's the biggest economic news around here for a while. There's been new companies move into the area, but smaller ones. Yeah. But nothing of that
employment size by any means.
Labor shortage issue, nothing much, still as tough as ever.
Still the same.
Um,
And as I've said 100 times before, it's a concern because companies will put up with it for a period of time, but then they'll pull a line here and pull a line there and go someplace else.
Has Kenny lost any companies at this point?
No, we haven't lost any, but
But just a bit.
but everyone is still looking for help. And there are still some expansion going on, or discussed for sure. And with that expansion, you'll probably see more automation. I mean, that's how a lot of people are resolving the issue, is if they can go to automation and reduce some human capital, then that's what they'll start doing.
Funny you mentioned that. I usually pick up the Sunday New York Times, which I don't read well, but my kid's in school in Italy, and he just checked in, had a really good time. He spent some time at an old folks home where his school is. And of course, lost his grandmother, Anna Neville, but he does very well with older folks and had a great time. And it's funny, I just happened to look in the Times, and there was like a page-3 story on old folks in Italy now getting some help from robots. That some of the old folks home robots are kind of helping out. It was kind of a funny story, but I guess that speaks to that issue as well. With FCIDC, I know you gave me some information on some of the legislative activities. Kind of an interesting session. There's a lot of big plans there. Some stuff that sounds like in an ideal world would be great to have, but the concern certainly on the governor's part, among others, about just tax increases if some of this stuff goes through. So you're paying some attention to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, every year you hear about balance within the legislature, and I think this is a prime year where there is no balance.
Not much balance.
And you'll see people will see what the impact there is or will be. What I gave you was, Richard, was probably the 4 or 5 top legislative items that have been discussed. They include universal meals, the Affordable Heat Act, child care, housing, paid family leave. And I don't know how. It's very similar to how on the national level, how will we as a state, or excuse me, a country will pay for this stuff.
Right, $31 trillion debt at this point.
And this one is how's the state going to pay for it? If you, I think the sheet I gave you, it shows an increase in taxes in the amount of $269 to $369 million.
Wow.
That's for a state of 650,000 people. They're tapping into property tax, payroll tax.
Even some talk with sales tax.
Sales tax is another one.
Which is now for places like St. Albans City and Town, now 7%.
It would go to 7.
With the LOL.
Yeah. So, we're 7 now, right?
It's 7 now.
It could go to 8%.
Wow.
So it's just my thing. We can't be all things to all people. I mean, at some point there has to be some concession. I'd like to think at some point there has to be concessions because, I mean, how many people do you know that have moved to Florida or Tennessee? I mean,
I know some folks.
I hear people all the time. I mean, as I get older, it's my population, and many of them are Florida residents or Tennessee residents.
And we're still taxing. They helped out on Social Security a bit, but still Social Security higher, middle higher income people and military pension still being taxed.
No, I mean the legislature looks to tax. I was just speaking to one of our clients.
Got about 40 seconds or so.
A client who has an X-ray machine for his business. And he gets a registration fee of $1,200 every year. Wow. No one even looks at the machine. He just has to fill out the paperwork for $1,200, and that's just another business cost. And I don't want to sound like I'm crying and whining about it, but it is getting out of hand someone will pay the price at some point.
Anyway, you want a couple seconds to end on a more optimistic note here.
Encourage people to check out the quilt show. That's going to be wonderful.
And we have the Kingman Street Queen show coming back
up in May, and then obviously the Maple Festival is going to be full force this year. So
tons of stuff this summer. Great. Thanks to St. Albans Mayor Tim Smith for guesting. Thanks to producer Alan Cunningham. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. Thanks for watching us here on Northwest Access TV. See you next time.